Recording in progress.
At 9, what'd you have, 02?
9:02.
Okay. Vice President Palmer.
Here.
Director Nelson. Here.
Okay. Are there any members of the public who wish to address the committee on items that are not on our agenda today?
Seeing none.
No? Is that you, gentlemen?
Yeah, that's me on this side. Because I'm going to want to share my screen in a few minutes.
Fair enough. Okay, moving on to administrative items, consent agenda, which is the minutes from January 3rd. I have a motion on that. Any public comment on minutes from last month? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, next item, discussion of upcoming activities and schedule.
Right, so I've been working on a little bit of a spreadsheet, very similar to what we've looked at in the past, trying to capture all of the things we have to do before we can get to a property owner vote, but most importantly, full expectation that when we go to LAFCO in April, they're going to want to see such a schedule, right? Project management schedules and decision-making matrix, like the next item, those are under this group's purview, so that's why we're here. I'm going to bring it up in just a second here so that everybody in the room and online can see it, but also I think I'll post it after the meeting's over, after I get some input, so you can kind of poke at it.
Yeah,
additional poking you'd like to do.
We had no.
I'll do the same with the decision-making matrix as well, just because I think it benefits everybody if I can do that. So let me share my screen real quick. So the way I use the spreadsheet we've used in the past, right? And what I've done is so let me just, so this is kind of the project at the highest level. And I was playing with it last night, so that's why this date, that's when it was last updated, so you can see. What I've kind of done is I've said, okay, here's the tasks that we have to do. Here's the years with the quarters going across, right? And if we get a 1 or a 2 year extension, we're going to either be here or here from a LAFCO perspective. And so kind of continuing across, for each one of these tasks, there's somebody other than just me that I view as the lead, meaning which subcommittee or which group is going to kind of have full authority over this. I can make this a little bigger so it's not quite such an eye test.
I did bring my distance. Thank you.
Back up just a little bit. Close this up so you can see it all. Alvin, if you want to roll forward, so you just have to get all
just the
crazy.
glare of the sun.
Yeah. So again, there's somebody other than me that's going to be kind of taking the lead or making the decisions or giving me direction on what to do. So that's what this lead is all about. And then total costs are just that, right? They're the estimated costs for certain things, particularly the things that we're going to outsource. If it's things we're doing internally, like a public meeting, we budget for those. So yes, it's going to be under the funds available. It'll be a yes by default because we budget for those. And then I made some assumptions under this funds available about, if we look at our current financial situation and I think about the stream of things that are coming, do we now, or do I anticipate based on the timeline, will we have funds to be able to do that, right? And so let me just go through each one of these and then we can talk about how you want to manipulate this, and I've got some other thoughts. So public workshops and outreach. So Q2, we talked about doing kind of here's the solving solution against the local solution, affluent versus gravity. We're going to talk a little bit about that in the next item. And just kind of that pulling everything together for people, right? And that's what the draft decision matrix I'm working on. So that's what that was. And then we also talked about having some sort of an end of the year-ish kind of thing where we begin talking about what a Proposition 218 is and how people participate more formally and getting all those pieces kind of lined up to go. Assuming that we go through the 218 process out here somewhere, somewhere in Q3, we have a workshop, hey, this is coming, right? You're going to have an opportunity to vote against this thing if you don't want to do it, so you're going to have a workshop around that. So that's what those two are all about. City of Solvang, treatment disposal. Remember, City of Solvang is treatment and disposal. It's not just treatment, right? And that's an important distinction. Technical study and design goes through all of Q1. I do anticipate next month, early next month, in fact, getting the final report from Stantec. Will it be in time for our March meeting? I'm not holding my breath for that. It might be, though.
Depending on the shape it's in.
Yeah, depending. So it would have to come within like the next 2 weeks for that time. So I let it slide into Q2 because we're going to be talking about that anyway. Importantly, on this one, you may recall that I was talking about the City of Solvang was going to have a May meeting where they talked about their system, and part of that conversation was going to be about us connecting to it. I met with the City of Solvang a couple weeks ago. They're pushing that meeting out until they have funding, or their funding line for the upgrade project. They basically said, look, why should we go back to the City Council if we don't know how we're going to pay for it? Which I kind of get, right? Technically, it's straightforward. The City Council has dealt with the technical side of it, but they said, well, it doesn't make sense for us to bring a calendar until we have funding, because without funding, we can't put anything on a calendar, right? So they're working through that. They have a number of potential funding sources. The biggest one they were relying on was the federal one, which is probably done. So the lead for that is the tech committee. This is the amount roughly that we've agreed to pay Stantec for our portion of that, right? $60,000. So then we talked about doing a project description, right? And I put that in the second quarter. I changed this from 60% design. We used to always talk about 60% design. I changed it to 80% design because in talking with Stantec and some other engineering firms, they said, I'm not sure why you would go to 60. Go to 80, and from 80 you can get right to construction docs, and it's not going to cost you much more. So you might as well go that next step and get pretty much, what that would mean is, like, for instance, where's the alignment of the pipes? What kind of a pump are you going to put on this thing? What, all of that would be done. So that's what the engineering firms say. I gave this 9 months because you've probably got a 2-month RFP process at the front. We've got to go through a more formal process to make sure we're doing things correct. And then 6 months for somebody to do that work. May or may not be enough time. I'm hoping it's more than enough time, but you never know, right? Tech committee is responsible for that. Reconfirmed that it's in the $300,000 range to do that 80% design. And I said yes to this because there are very few activities that make more sense than getting the design done, right? So we do have $300,000 we can pay for that. Assessment engineering report, remember, we don't necessarily need that before we go out to a property owner vote. That would take the very generic spreadsheet thing that, oh my gosh, suddenly brain fade on that. NV5, thank you. That NV5 put together and begin to talk about, well, what do residential lots pay versus commercial, and what other attributes do we want to add to that? So that's untimed because it's not critical for the Prop 218. And it's the finance committee, give me just a second, and it's over $100,000, and we don't have the money to pay for it. So go ahead.
I'm just, I finished your summer, I'll hold the questions.
Siting options, I said, we could look at that in Q3. There's, because it comes to me after the project description, that would be this group kind of looking at that, and I've got some information I can share with you today that might be helpful. Environmental review, same timeline as the 80% design. I'm going to suggest to the board that you form an ad hoc committee for that because it's going to be very focused just on environmental review. This is the number, I increased it $25,000 because when I last talked to Padre, they said, yeah, we're going to, you've got our 2022 rates. They're a little more now in 2025. So I said it's probably closer to 125, so I added $25,000 to that. Yes, again, much like the design, those are the two that we really need to get through to get to a property owner vote. Grants, the grant group is working on a plan. We'll be looking for grants throughout. As you get into the property owner vote process, you're going to do some polling, probably going to cost you in the neighborhood of $25,000. That might be an M for maybe, depending upon timing. You got to do a workshop, that's what this is. And then you've got a voting process, which is probably in the order of this by the time you send out everything and everything else that you have to do. So total of that is a little over $760,000 to get us to a successful Prop 218, hopefully, without the assessment engineering report, of which we've got about 400,000. So
For the, currently, that 400,000 through 2025 is 400,000.
yeah, so we just, the finance group looks at that more closely, by the time you add just regular administration and, audits and everything else, yeah, there's about 400,000.
Annually?
No,
Or between now and the end of
in our checkbook today,
Okay.
and we get about 225 annually. So there'd be another 225 coming in somewhere out here.
Understood. I'm just trying to project out for costing through 2026 to meet the 760.
Yeah, so you could kind of, you've got 400,000, just to give you a sense of that, you've got about 400,000 right here, and you get about another 200 here. So that's 600, but then as we saw before, just all of the stuff we have to do.
Okay. So that's a discussion.
Yep, you get another 200 out here, so you could continue to just kick it out until you get. But
I'm just looking for how we go back to the water board with a specific ask to get it goes back to if they.
Yep.
How do they want to help us get to yes? And LAFCO, how do they want to help us accelerate this?
Keep in mind also, just because we've talked about it before, we're in for WRDA funds up to $4 million through the Army Corps that would pay for a big chunk of this. In fact, this entire line and this entire line. And if we get WRDA funding, I'm going to recommend that we just take that to final design docs, because there'll be funding to do it. That way we've got biddable docs that can be put on the street. And, it's like anything, right? At 30%, the costs are going to vary quite a bit, right? It's like the guy who walks in and says, yeah, you want to remodel the room here, somewhere in this number. When he starts ordering the cabinets or whatever, well, that narrows down. When the cabinets get delivered, now he knows what the cost actually was and that sort of thing. So the closer we get to 100% design, the more confidence we can have in that number. So at 80%, you can be relatively sure that you've got a tight enough range to at least take something out to the public and say, look, we're going to have a $25 million project and this is what it's going to consist of, as opposed to adding a bunch of money to make it.
At what point on this entire line do we focus on one, either effluent or gravity? I mean,
Right there.
honestly-
Next quarter.
Okay. Because I think,
April, May.
yeah, I'm thinking, going along with a double focus it's just time consuming. If we can get to a decision, then.
We're going to talk about that
Yeah,
in particular as part of the next one, but yeah, the thinking here that I've worked with Kenny on is, I'm continuing to work on that decision-making thing that we'll talk about on the next item.
Sure.
We have a public workshop, right, so we can hear from the public,
Right.
and then at the next meeting, the board makes a decision.
Right.
We're going this way, with this and this,
There we go.
which is why at the last meeting I'm saying, tell me everything you need to know so you can make that decision other than,
No, that's good.
Yeah. it's time.
It's time.
Yeah.
I think in most people's minds that it is.
And I think once we get to the next item, you'll see there's some big holes in what I've got for you, but once we fill those holes,
That's some focus.
I feel like-
having a lot of focus.
what else do you
Right, what we were elected to do,
Yeah.
make a decision. So,
Yes.
my question on the assessment engineer report, remind me,
Mhm.
is that for construction only? Is that the capital cost only, or is that assess O&M? So what I'm getting at is, it seems like that's information we want as part of the public workshop process for people to understand the difference between maybe the in-district versus solving options, and what, if it's also for O&M, the difference between in-district and solving, or effluent, and for, because the costs are gonna influence people's preference.
Yep, so, to respond to your question, so, what I've done is, and you'll see it with the next item, is I've made some assumptions,
Okay.
and you're gonna help me with those assumptions.
Okay.
But I think we're kind of close enough, right? Because let's put
I see.
our
On the estimating, what kind of closing?
yes. So from a property owner vote perspective, you don't say, it's not gonna be, Lisa, you're gonna pay $12, Tom, you're gonna pay $11.95, and I'm gonna pay $12.25, right? You say, the project is $50 million. That's what the property team looks like. So you don't need to drill down to each individual parcel, but I've tried to allow for that. And I'll show you how when we get to the next item. Basically what I said is we've got 372 parcels in the district. I treated them all the same, regardless of whether you're commercial or residential, regardless of the size of your lot, because you can, in your own mind, you can say, well, I've got a larger than normal residential lot, so I'll pay a little bit more than that person. I've got smaller than the rest.
Yeah.
And you can say, well, look, I'm commercial, I'm gonna pay higher than that number, and I'm residential, I'm gonna pay lower than that number.
Yeah.
It's just a question of degree at that point, right? Depending on what kind of business you have, and the decisions we make about how to deal with the assessment engineer.
And that's what the assessment engineer evaluates.
Exactly. And contrary to popular statement, you could go forward with just a lot size.
Yeah.
It's perfectly legal to do that. So where I'm trying to get with this one, again, I'm trying to get to LAFCO, and I heard the board at the last meeting say, a 1 year wouldn't be such a bad thing. I'm not sure we can get to a vote in 1 year.
From 218.
Yep.
I understand that. The only reason I said that was I know we won't be to a 218, but if that's what they want us to do, because they want us to come back and show them again in a year instead of 2 years, all I'm saying is I'm fine. I mean, whatever works with the extension.
So we're gonna ask for two, but if they say, well, we'll give you one,
Yeah.
we've already okay with that.
So putting on your LAFCO hat, meaning you're, for the most part, an elected official, like a board of supervisors member or a city council member, what else would you like to see in the Los Olivos CSD's plan that helps you? The only thing, if you look at a typical Gantt chart and it says, oh, this one you can't do this until that's done, you can show the little line. I could do that easily enough, just to show how things are related to each other.
I think that would be helpful. The other thing is, in here, I think it'd be helpful to have it, and maybe it's on the other piece you're talking about, is where we're actually making a decision on the project description. It just says, it doesn't say approved project description or public workshop on project description. I think we need somewhere in that, whatever, if it's this one or the other one, that shows when our projection for making a decision that moves all the rest of this forward. Because we can stay in study mode and,
Right. So I
that's,
like that thought. So this is, I'll come up with some way to show this, but
yeah, it's like, here's the decision. Yeah.
it's that sort of thing. And I
And
can
then we
do
run
that.
on all those, that's like,
Yeah.
it's like before and after that date.
So this is project workshop. This one is first real 218 workshop. This one is the.
Do you think we have one additional workshop, like yeah, I think we just need one.
Yeah.
Present all the material, here's what we're,
Yeah, I think it's just
here's
one. I
options
really do.
weighing, one that's clearly presented.
Yep.
And then we get feedback, and then at the next meeting, we're taking that feedback and deliberating.
And that's what this
Yeah.
schedule is kind of predicated on.
Because really, that's when we'll get down to the nitty gritty and people will start saying, okay, this is where we're going, we're not just doing a pot. Trying to make soup, we're actually building it.
And to some extent,
Yeah.
exactly.
And
And
that's-
you're done studying.
Right.
You're moving forward.
Yeah.
After 7 years and stuff. So yeah.
So remind me too, environmental review has to be complete before the vote is held? We
No.
need to know if the project's viable. I mean, that's my concern, is that, you know, because
No, it
go
doesn't.
to a 218 and then there's some fatal flaw in the EIR.
Right.
That's what I don't want, you know.
So 2 things about the EIR in my mind to keep in mind, and we'll get into this when we get into the conversation about a final project description. Certainly, if we do a local solution, we're going to need 100% in my mind a full-blown EIR.
Right.
If we do a pipe to solving, there are much smaller, lighter processes that may be pursuable, meaning each EIR starts out with an initial study that kind of says, what's the scope of this thing gotta be, right? That's kind of the first step in an EIR. At that step, you decide, confirm full-blown EIR, or you go down what's known as a negative dec or negative declaration or mitigated negative declaration process, which is much smaller and faster and less expensive. If you're digging up a road that's already been dug up to put in pipe, next to pipe that's next to buried this and buried that, you could probably argue we've got a negative deck or a mitigated negative deck. If we're building a plant on a lot that's never had construction on it before, oh, hold on, time out, whole different story, right? So I don't see this is where I was going with this, the EIR necessarily as the gating factor. I do see the next level of design as the real gating factor.
Okay. So I do think too, if we were to, one other thing we should consider on the EIR is if we do pursue the solving option, they may have an environmental document done that we can tee off of. So just
for that portion of it.
for that portion, for the in, and even as much of it is worth looking at, so as much as we can tee off existing environmental.
Agreed. Yeah. So again, to me, I don't see the environmental as the gating factor. It's that 80% design as I've listed here, because I don't think the community is going to be open to it. Well, it's about that much, right? They're going to want to know, no, it's this, right?
Especially the in-district portion.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's really, if we're, well, in district, whichever the solution is going to be the, I think the residents' most important part, and then the cost.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So what other feedback do you need from us on that?
Well, again, back to my question I posited a few minutes ago. You know, if you're sitting up there on the big dais with all those other city councilmen and board of supervisors member, what else do you want to see?
I would say where it says funds available, and we have no's, I would do another column that says funding source, maybe. Like where if we just say no, what do we have there? I guess we are saying we've got enough, we've got the technical design, but not enough for assessment, that's fine. Yeah, so we basically don't have the money to do the vote. Right?
Yep, then all the mailings that have to happen.
So where does that come from?
Well, you either
County?
slide the schedule, or you find funds from a grant or a
Okay.
gift,
All right.
or
Well, when we get that far, that's another point to contact the Water Resources
Yeah.
Board.
water board, any number of places.
Any of those places, because once you've got a plan and they can see what they're gonna do, then they're more likely to throw in, especially when you're going in the direction they would like you to go.
Is that within the scope of the WRDA funding?
No, but it would take enough things off the table. If we got the word of funding now, there's funding to do that other stuff, right? Because you're taking the 2 big numbers off of there, the 300 and the 150 coming off the table. So unless you have some additional input, I'm gonna, like I said, I'll clean this up a little bit more and I'll post it on today's meeting page so that you can look at it again later. But if you've got input for me,
I think I personally just need to spend more time with it. I think it's there. I think maybe if I'm LAFCO, I'm looking for something that tells me exactly when the Prop 218 vote would be. Like, I would circle it or something. I mean, or
So you
highlight, if they want to see, when are you getting to the thing we've been asking you to do, right? This is all leading up. So if we're saying it's gonna be Q4 2026.
so you want a date there?
Yeah, or just,
So it's,
or,
you know,
or highlight it, or something, or
Change
maybe,
its color to
or,
something that.
yeah,
pops
just
out.
highlight the whole bottom row or something, just that makes the end date pop, so that makes it easy for them to see when we get to that, yeah.
I'll play with that a little bit then.
And I think the biggest thing to, in my mind, aside from what we do in district, is that solvent treatment.
Yeah, we're gonna,
Because I think that's gonna be a big decider for a lot of people. Because it takes that siting out of it, which is gonna be, no
We'll
matter,
talk
we
about
already know it's controversial, it's gonna be more controversial. Because you gotta find the land to do it. And if we can, if that can get eliminated, that's gonna make a lot of things more palatable for a lot of people, I think.
certainly don't disagree. We can talk about that for a minute if you like.
No, I think, I mean, we can only do what we can do when we get, we get that, Stantec report,
Yeah, so if I
then
could,
it's kind of up to something in a sense, but I think my feel in reading on it is they're already open to the idea, so it's not gonna be something that's gonna be a fight necessarily with them, it's gonna be figure out what it's gonna cost, kind of thing, more than anything else. And I think that, we can, I don't know, they gotta get their funding, but at the same time, we can talk to them about, assuming you have the funding for that, where do we fit in this plan if that comes back as a very feasible thing? I mean, that number can get, or that formula can get figured out too.
The other thing is if I'm LAFCO and we've got the city of Solving option here, I want to hear from the city of Solving. Like, is this us pushing it? Are they open to it? I don't know what they would say or how they would go on record. If I'm LAFCO, I would be looking for that, for something other than us saying it's an option. Just validating the process to whatever extent we can of discussion and study, collaboration and cooperation, whatever.
so let me ask you a couple of questions. So there's kind of, in my mind, at least three pieces that speak to that. One, their agreement with the cities, or the community of San Ynez says, look, we can sell our 80% of the capacity to whoever we want, including, specifically mentioned, Ballard and Olivos.
Okay.
That's one. During their in 2024 for their 2025 strategic plan, they said they want to be a regional wastewater treatment solution, including for Los Olivos. And then, I mean, we have been meeting with them, and they brought it up again in February, at the beginning of the month, at their city council meeting, that we're there. So they've made every indication.
Got it. Well, then I would just make it easy for them to understand that, and whatever we're submitting to them about progress and options, I would just summarize what you just said and have that in there, and have links to documents if you want, or whatever.
Okay.
Just, because that's what I would do. And does that raise any jurisdictional issues for them, future? LAFCO?
No,
Okay,
no.
I think.
Yeah,
the
it's a good question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just,
We're much like San Ynez CSD.
I thought that was, I'm just, again, you're asking me to put on my
Yep,
LAFCO
yep.
list, this isn't fair.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant.
I'll answer that as well. And we can talk to them.
Clear and understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, make it easy for them.
Oh, yeah.
We were talking about the cost, Tom. We're going to talk about the cost in a few minutes, and what I've got there. as far as city solving costs, we'll do that as part of the decision matrix. Okay, so back to this then. Anything else from the two of you that you think would be helpful?
All right, no.
Okay, well, like I said, I'll clean this up a little more and I'll get it posted on the website so you can look at it, and anybody else that wants to look at it can look at it.
Okay. You want to take a vote?
Yeah, you have to.
Any public comment on this item?
Well, we're talking about getting costs up to, we were also talking about getting costs up to the next workshop to educate people what that's gonna be. When does it play a role of what the long-term cost of maintenance is gonna be on each item too? When does that fall into that spectrum?
What's the next item?
Oh, okay,
It's a short answer. With the next item, you'll see it.
sorry.
Is that okay? Sorry.
Yeah,
I don't
no,
always
it's
respond to
not-
public
I was
comment,
looking
but.
to- I know, but I was looking to you as a response, so that was good. Okay, it doesn't look like you have
I don't see the hand raised. In fact, did Dennis disappear?
any.
He heard, oh, this is, this is a subcommittee, it's not the full board. All right. Shall I move on then?
Yeah, let's move on.
Okay, so much like we just talked about that one, I have what I've been loosely terming a decision-making matrix. Before I even bring it up, I want to say this is very, very early. It is not anywhere near correct. So
It's a
just
working draft.
it's like the first cut at a working draft. So nobody freak out when you see this, all right? I'm looking for input on both form and function, but I don't want anybody to. In fact, I thought about just taking some of the numbers out, but I thought no, leave them in because it's beginning to form the picture, and I think it helps tell the story. So here we go.
Buckle your seatbelt.
Yeah, I just know somebody's going to freak out over this, but that's okay. We're going to dive in. No, we're just going to dive in. All right, so I'm waiting for some things to clear out of my way here, so I can shrink and make this a little bigger. All right, so let me. Sorry. I'm going to make this big, and then I'm going to shrink it back down.
Yeah.
All right, so going across the top here. Oops, sorry. Let me get over here. Going across the top here. I've got a number of columns, and I'm going to tell you what each one of them are. And I start off with a couple of numbers here. Using a couple of resources like the county's website and some other, I said, what's a loaded rate for a wastewater treatment person? So that's an hourly rate.
Personnel.
That's an hourly rate for personnel. 372 is the number of parcels we have.
I see.
Okay, and I use those continually, and so if you say, "Guy, that's you should have used $93 an hour." Okay, fine, 93. We're done. I can do that, and everything will change accordingly. All right. So then you've got costs, and to public comment, this is the cost I think that people are asking about. You've got capital, meaning the initial construction costs, and then you've got annual operations and maintenance costs. And ultimately, I drive back to annual numbers as opposed to monthly numbers because my assumption is that the capital will be on your property tax bill. And so you're going to see that on an annual basis. You're not going to pay it on a monthly basis. There are some costs, depending upon what you're doing, that are related to an individual parcel. For instance, when we talk about effluent-based systems, there's an on-site cost that is unique to that parcel. There are other costs, like main transmission lines, that are community costs, and that's in big quotes, right? So I've got individual parcel costs and then community costs, and then I total it for the year, just so you can say, well, what is that a year, right? And we'll come back to this in a minute. This is from prior requests. Will it get through the water board and EHS? The short answer is everything we're looking at today will get through them. Okay, we're not looking at anything that they would say, hold on, nobody's ever done that, we're really worried about its success. So that answer is basically yes. Then I've got this column in here for grant potential, because some solutions have a higher likelihood of grants than others. And different grants are used in different ways. Some grants will be given to the district, some grants may be given to individual parcel owners. And depending upon what we're doing, different grants may come into play. Risk is the one I'm still dealing with. It's a really difficult one to describe, but I'm going to work on it. It's next for me. I didn't get that far.
Well, there's so many dimensions to risk. There's like physical risk, there's economic, there's social,
Yeah,
there's,
exactly.
I mean, it's like.
Project risk.
Yeah.
So I've got
It's
to.
like, it's.
I've got to come up with a way to deal with that, and I haven't done it yet. Then I've got this whole, because people were curious about this, what's the disruption in the community? You know, I don't want the streets torn up for 12 months. Well, none of these require the streets to be torn up for 12 months, but what's the disruption? And so I broke that into construction and O&M disruption. And then I said, in the community or on the individual parcel, right? So, because again, multiple dimensions to your point, right? The construction one is done and goes away, the ongoing one is there forever. I can't give you numbers for disruption. I can tell you this one's higher than that one's lower than that one, you know, that sort of thing. So that's all I've done. So then the next thing I did was I said, okay, you've got 3 portions to any wastewater treatment plant. You've got collection, treatment, and disposal, right? So I broke the costs in particular and these various disruptions and other things apart by collection, treatment, and disposal. Remember when we talked about the city of Solvang, treatment and disposal are covered, right? They've already got that. So I started with collection because that's at the front end of the system, right? So gravity-fed collection based on a south collection point, being down by the bridge, $27,938,000. Effluent, option B, is $21,673,000. And in that number, importantly, is about $6.5 million, $6.6 million in tanks, okay? And then the other option we talked about a lot is maybe it's gravity downtown for the surrounding lots and everything else is effluent. That cost gets almost back up to the capital of gravity fed, but there's still some potential advantage to that. All right, so what does that look like from a capital perspective? If I look at gravity, and so here's some data points that I've gathered that I've been trying to use. So 5%, you can actually, this isn't a home loan, this is they call it the iBank. It's a loan for local government. You can get better rates than what you get for your home, right? That's the way it works. You and I, Republican in the state of California, voted to pass these bonds for infrastructure improvement, right? That's what these are basically in the back end of this. So here's the first really, really, really very extremely important assumption that I mentioned before. I treated all 372 parcels the same. I don't care if you're big, small, commercial, residential, vacant, I don't care. There's 372 of them, okay? So if you divide that $28 million, I'll just call it capital number, by 372, you get each parcel for collection is going to be responsible for a 30-year loan through their property tax of $75,000 or about $4,800 a year per person. Again, residential is going to be a little lower than that, commercial is going to be a little higher than that, smaller lots a little lower than that, and, you know, all that sort of stuff. Everybody's the same. Did the same for effluent, right? It's about $58,000, so the annual loan is $37,000, hybrid $68,000, so it's about $4,400. Okay, so that's the capital side of it, right? So that's this right here. Now let's jump over to the O&M. So for a gravity-fed system on your individual parcel, there's basically no O&M. Yeah, you might have to clean it once every blue moon because your tree grew into some PVC pipe, but that's really, really small. The community side of this, what I did was I used San Ynez as a surrogate to determine what the cost of a collection system is. Remember, if we go to the city of Solvang, that's basically what we're going to be, right? Just like San Ynez. And the way I did this is I said, here's what the city of Solvang charges a residential home. Here's what San Ynez charges for a residential home. The difference between those two is the collection system that San Ynez pays for, right? Because the treatment on that end, once they get to the city, isn't the same. So I used that delta between those two numbers, and I said, okay, we've got 372 people just like that. So it's $80,000 a year. And then I said, logically, does that make any sense? And I said, well, if you figured, you know, the scale of, pay scale of somebody, That's, you know, for a local government sort of person, 80,000 or a contract, $80,000 to take care of all the pipes and clean them out occasionally and look at the pumps, and yeah, that's probably not crazy. So it might be a little high, a little low. Again, it's based on this $93 number, you know, if I put it back to what I had now, 84.
84.50.
You know, that's all part of it, right? So I took that, again, I used the Sanita's number, multiplied it times 12 because they do it on a monthly basis. This is an annual number I'm trying to get to. Then on the individual parcel, as you can see in my notes here, according to Regen, every pump should be evaluated every year to make sure they're pumping correctly for an effluent system. It takes about an hour. And then I said, you know, every 5 years, average, we're going to pump that tank. It's going to take 2 hours. And importantly, that number, as you can see there, it doesn't include electricity because you have to run a pump, right? And I don't know how that's going to happen. Probably just going to be part of somebody's electrical bill. They're not going to carve it out, right? Separate from. So based on an $84 an hour rate, on average, each year you're going to pay $118 per parcel that has an effluent system, okay? Then there's the community part, right? You still have collection. And in this case, I just said that it's 3/4 the cost of a gravity system. You don't have to do as much pumping. You're still going to have at least one lift station, regardless of whether you're effluent or not. So it's cheaper. I said 75% of the cost of a gravity fed system. Tell me if you think it should be different. It's a number I'm using for a calculation. It's an assumption I made that it's 3/4 the cost of a gravity fed system to have that. So then I just do a simple math, right? I say this number plus 372 of those is $104,000 a year for an effluent system from an O&M perspective. If you've got a hybrid, it's a little bit more because you have some gravity, and so you have 106,000, okay? So that's that number. Then I did the same thing under treatment, right? So the MBR system that we've talked about in the past, including the land that we would need to buy it, all that sort of stuff, 19.9 million. O&M, we got this range of numbers from the closest cousin. I actually increased it by 10% because the number was a little bit old. I then used the high end of that. Let me be clear, I used the 400,000 of that end because it's never on the bottom end, right, for a contract like that. And I said, okay, what is that divided by 372 parcels? It's $1,000 a year for treatment, okay? This is where, this number's in red because this is a wag, right? A wild ass guess. But there's some foundation in reality behind it. And I'm going to show you the foundation in just a second. So here's the foundation up here. The city of Solvang charges a new residential connection $8,000. I think it's an artificially low number, but they charge $8,000 as a capacity charge to connect to their system. That doesn't count the pipes you have to put in. That doesn't count anything else. That's just, you want to connect to our system, to get through the door, it's $8,000. Then you got to do all the work, right? We know that there's $3.5 million worth of work that has to be done to the existing Solvang infrastructure for us to be able to run our effluent through their pipes. And it's about 3.5 miles from here to Sunnyfield Park. The historic number that Mike Army, our prior director, and others have used is just assume $1 million a mile to run a pipe. Now that was a gravity-fed pipe, and we'll get the number here in March from Stantec. So this is why I say it's a wag, but I added another 3.5 million, right? So what you have is connection charge if you're in the city of Solvang, upgrades, and our pipe in pump stations to get there. That number in total is 9.9 million, call it $10 million, right? If you look at that, I then went through that same math, right? I said, okay, if you have 372 parcels, what's their portion of the treatment system? If it's an MBR, what's their portion of a treatment system if we connect to the city of Solvang? Here's the annual. Don't get distracted by this monthly. I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So that's the portions that would appear on somebody's property tax bill. okay? So then, this is the monthly O&M charge, so this is that 400,000 divided by, just doing simple math. It basically says, we would pay as a residential person on average, if every parcel were the same, about $90 a month for O&M. So that's the ongoing, essentially forever number, right? Because O&M never stops. The capital would be there for 30 years and then fall off, right? So that's what it would look like. And I said, well, does that make any sense at all? Well, the city of Solvang charges $68.87 for a parcel, a residential person in the city. San Ynez charges $86.87 for each single family home. And I provided some other numbers here. Importantly, if you're a new parcel, and that meaning San Ynez has to run new lines out to that subdivision and then connect you, they charge between $75,000 and $100,000, that getting through the door fee, right? And then they charge you $86.87 a month if you're a single family home. There's some other numbers in here, if you have a second unit on your parcel, the community, San Ynez CSD charges you another $64 a month. If you're a hotel and you have no kitchens in your rooms, it's $40 a hotel room. If you're a restaurant, it's $426 a month. If you're a wine place with no food, it's $109, and elementary schools, they charge you per student, $2.61. So that's how they divide their budget up. Will we do it the same? No, but we'll take a similar approach, I'm sure, right? And all these are their published rates, so I'm not making any of this up, just like I didn't make up the city solving monthly rate, that's a published rate. So that's sort of the treatment side. Then, we've got the numbers from an advanced on-site system, right? It's between $30,000 and $70,000 according to both the region and the water board, and you pay somewhere between $1,500 and $1,900 a year to manage that system. That doesn't include everything, but it's most everything.
So I have a question on the approved by EHS water quality. So it is approved.
They are approving them today. I don't know if they'd approve it for the entire community.
I'm just putting that, I just feel like we need a caveat there, and I'm not trying to lead the witness.
Yeah, that's fine.
If I'm looking at this and you're saying it says, yes, they're gonna approve it as a community solution.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, I'm just thinking about as we move forward and we're sharing this, it's like, okay, well, that's easy. If that's an approved solution.
Yeah.
And
Then I don't
that's
need
the
to go
cost,
with the rest
then why
of
do
it.
we need to be why we're doing all this?
Yeah.
So
I don't know what the answer is, but it's an interim solution in their mind. I don't want to speak for them, but I think we need to. And if it is yes, do you know what I'm saying?
Oh, I
just feel
totally
like
know what you're saying.
we
To the
gotta figure
extent.
out-
Well, yeah.
What percent
Yeah.
is it possible that it's approved, right?
What was, sorry?
Like, it's a 75% chance it'll be approved instead of actual approved.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so the water board, let me maybe try and address this one in total. I've asked the water board and EHS for that exact, I want something in writing
Yeah.
from them that says, will you approve this for the community or not?
Yeah.
And they've yet to give us that, right?
Well,
They are
I think
approving those
You
today.
sprint, so here's a thought, is send them this, it's like, I have to publish this because we're driving to a decision, I need to provide the community with a summary of the information. This is, right now, what I have from you, and if, if you want a community solution, my saying it's an approved option, anyway.
Yeah, no, I get it,
No,
totally, yeah.
And it
So-
already is for over 2.5 acres.
Yeah, but that's why we don't have anyone in the district who's 2.5 acres. Everything in the district is.
Well, we have a few.
Well, we have, a few. But
Over on
that's
Santa
like,
Barbara.
So,
yeah, like Karen.
yeah, so the struggle with, and I can show you that just if you'd like, but the struggle with advanced onsite is if you wanted to build a house today, regardless of your lot size, they would make you put one in.
I understand, I'm just trying to figure out if we're looking at this purely as,
Yeah.
Right.
here's the set of information you need to make a decision that says we should do advanced on-sites, it's the least expensive.
Right, agreed.
if I'm a.
Unless that's a qualified yes.
Yeah.
That's why I put in, yeah.
But the other problem you're gonna have is you gotta be certified to work on them, as it is, I gotta get on, septic guy's list 2 months in advance so he can get to me the pump.
Yeah.
You know, we're
For
gonna go across that bridge too.
Agreed. Agreed, yeah, totally. Okay, so just real quick to finish this up. So then I did the same for disposal, right? If we go with ponds, $2.2 million, the community said pretty loud and clear, they'd rather see chambers. It's easier from a space perspective. It's more expensive because you need more space, and it's underground. So I just used the Perk Chambers example. Same math, right? 5-year or 30-year 5% loan on your annual property tax bill. Each parcel owner would be responsible for almost $14,000 or another $900 a year. So let me slide out a little bit so you can see this full thing, just real quick. Yep, go ahead.
Somewhere, I don't know where do we capture the individual property owner responsibility regardless of the solution for the lateral run from the property to the community solution, I'll say. Somewhere, I mean, that's not financed by us, but that's a cost that the property owner is gonna bear from it.
Well,
Right.
so, interesting. Your board has to make that decision. These costs all include an assumption about a lateral.
Oh, okay, good. All right, I think now that you say that, we've had this discussion, I forgot.
Now,
Okay, we
If,
should footnote it somewhere.
if we decide, if the board decides that we're not gonna try and capitalize it, those would come out, right? But then they're gonna go right back to the property owner because they're gonna have to pay for it at construction time.
Capitalize it.
So it's kind of an all-in cost,
Okay.
as
all right.
is. Now, who's gonna pay that and when they're gonna pay it, we can have that discussion
Well,
later.
it's like, we had the
Yeah.
discussion about the electricity for an effluent
Right.
system, that the homeowner would pay to remove the old tank and pay for the electricity hookup, and, those are kind of built in.
Yep.
For that too, I would imagine.
So, I'm just gonna slide right and then we'll get to the next one. So, grant potential, yes, clearly, there's a slightly less, and I don't, slightly, how much less, I don't know, don't ask me to put a number on it. There's a less likely if the owner owns the effluent tank than if the district owns the effluent tank, just because who's really responsible for it, all that sort of stuff. In my conversations with different people, kind of came down to, yeah, probably if we go with effluent, it makes sense for the district to provide the tank, so we're consistent in the tanks that are out there, and provide a final inspection, but leave it to the homeowner to install the thing and get around fluffy and everything else, right? Because then you're not responsible if somebody's, special roses got killed, well, you did it, not us. And then the disruption, and I'll stop. This disruption, so construction disruption, this is all kind of relative, right? Kind of a medium level in the community because you're going to dig up the roads no matter what you do. It's a little lower with effluent because you can go longer runs probably, and it's not as deep. Hybrid kind of, the downtown's going to get torn up the same. Individual parcel with gravity fed is probably a lower disruption because you're mostly just going to abandon things. You don't have to worry about replacing a tank, so on. It's higher comparatively with effluent. Again, I'm not trying to, it's not maximum, kind of thing. And I just put hybrid in the middle because it's kind of between the two. All three of those from an ongoing perspective, pretty low from a community perspective. Yeah, somebody will be out there occasionally with a truck, but you just don't see them. Individual parcel, basically none for gravity fed. Comparatively, it's high. It's a couple hours a year, and you got to know you've got a tank there. You've got to, worry about electrical, all that sort of stuff. And medium for hybrid solution. So I've done some of those, and then treatment-wise, same sort of thing. Community is kind of a medium one because it'll be isolated to a site, none on an individual. Ongoing is kind of low. City of Solving arguably might be a little lower, but you're still going to have the construction. So there's going to be a little bit more construction going down Alamotado than just in the community. On-site, kind of the same thing. And ponds, they're just low everywhere. I mean, even the construction, you're not going to be really notice much. So let me stop there and see what questions you might have, because I've got two more sheets I want to show you.
Well, this is a great, for all of your consternation about sharing it, it's a great start at synthesizing,
So
organizing the costs in a comparative.
if you're ready to have your mind just go.
Sure, let's do it.
Okay, here we go. Hold on to your chair arms. Sample bills. Remember I told you I was driving toward an annual number for everything.
Yeah,
Okay, so don't throw
don't
things.
freak out.
Nobody's got any sharp objects, do they? Let me do this. So let's start over here. So every system has components, right? If you go with gravity, there's a capital and an O&M cost. If you go to effluent, there's a capital and O&M cost. MBR, capital and O&M. Solving, capital O&M. Perk chamber, so disposal, O&M. This is the annual cost per parcel for each one of those things. If I've done the math right, I need to verify it. Yeah, it is. So, if you have, here's the system, right? A gravity system with an MBR and perk chamber. So this is the 100% local system. You've got gravity, you've got MBR, and you've got perk chambers. And you've got an annual bill of about $11,000. If you go with effluent, MBR, and perk chambers, you've got effluent, you've got MBR, you've got perk chambers, $9,500. Here's where that crazy ass solving number comes in. So please, right? So you've got a gravity collection system, and you've got solving. So it's about $7,600 a year. And then effluent is about $1,000 less because the capital costs right here, right? Now, over time, there is a crossover. I could calculate it because this is more than this, right? I don't know how long it takes, $60 to get to $1,000. You know what I mean? This is the same cost, and so it's $6,600 a year. That doesn't account for risk or disruption in our view shed or any, but if you want to get down to the numbers.
Yeah, no, this is super helpful. It doesn't blow my mind at all.
Yeah, well, it scares the Jesus out of me because I'm really worried about the numbers that I've made the assumption back here, right? Because those numbers are only as good as the other numbers, right?
But I think we're comparatively, though,
Yeah.
then, and that's without any grant funding.
Correct.
I mean, the O&M is going to be what it is.
O&M is O&M.
Can you go back to that?
Do I have to?
sample? Yes. You're so funny. So the O&M on the solving for effluent versus gravity, can you move your arrow? And the cursor is like, so it's the same. So the difference is.
So between these two,
Yeah,
it's just,
that's where the difference
it's up here, right? It's the O&M and capital of one system versus the other. This is the same, just like this one, regardless of what kind of collection you do, the treatment and the disposal is the same. It's kind of like that simpler chart I put up at the last workshop, right?
it makes me think, is there a regulatory, like the inspection on the effluent, is that all included in the O&M? I'm just thinking about, this is interesting to me, because I'm thinking about effluent and access and more activity.
That problem's not answered.
Yeah, but that's where I feel like,
Yeah.
and I'm just trying to understand, I don't know, that doesn't seem like it's reflected in the effluent.
So it's only reflected right there, right? What this says is every year you'd have to have access to every site for an hour, and every 5 years you're gonna need it for 2 hours to pump it.
Right,
That's the amount of access you need to a parcel.
okay,
So when people say, oh, you're gonna have to well, that's the amount we're gonna need.
okay,
That's how much you're gonna have. Now, if something breaks, you're gonna have to get on site, right? But
okay.
barring something breaking, you need
And that,
1 hour a year
and
and
the
2 years.
capital, the new tank is included in the capital for the effluent.
Correct. As is, again, a plug number for how much laterals are gonna cost.
Yeah.
And it's in both gravity and FO.
Right.
I don't know why.
Well, I just worry about, I will tell you, my big concern, my big whopping concern is that number right there. That's why it's in red. I'm confident in the rest. I mean, the engineers have given me the rest.
But we're gonna have that shortly.
Yes.
So is there a reason, and you're gonna have that, if we have the report in March,
Well, but I still won't have this side of the number, right?
you won't have.
No.
I won't have, what are we gonna pay for our connection?
Right, because that's negotiate.
And there's different ways to calculate
Well,
this,
that's
right?
negotiate, so I think all you can do, well, we'll need to figure out some way to validate those assumptions
Well, and the only thing.
before we have a final, this is a-
You have to keep going, you'll get there.
No, but it's like, when do we negotiate a deal with solving?
Yeah, exactly.
At what point?
Yeah.
Can you do like an LOI or an MOU or something that gets us some framework committed to? That, I'm just thinking some indication from them that like, here's a framework that would give us some level of, not total certainty, but some level of
At
certainty.
least a better ballpark that they, it's gonna be a hard one, other than if they can calculate what they charge for so much
Yeah, I could do it that way too.
volume,
Yeah,
then if they do that with San Ynez,
Yeah,
they can only charge
yeah,
what it costs them to do it.
Right.
They can't charge them more for it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if we've got the numbers for that yet. I think we do. Don't we?
Again, I could use some surrogates to back into that number, right? I mean, if we said, I'm just gonna make it up for just a minute now, our future peak average daily is 125 with a peak of 300,
Right.
right? So 300,000 gallons per day. At the peak, at full build out in, I think it was 4 years, I forget, 20 years. You could kind of step back from that and say, okay, how many houses of that? How many houses would it take in the city of Solving to get to 300,000?
Right.
Multiply that by 8,000, which is what they charge a house.
Yeah.
I mean, that's another way I could have done this,
Yeah.
but then it's,
It'd be nice to hear from them, though. I mean,
Agreed,
honestly,
yeah.
I think, like I say, an MOU or a letter of intent or something like that, okay, this is not firm, it's not the bottom line, but we're in the ballpark right here. And if we got that, where we have some benefit, I think that's a helpful number to have.
yeah, or maybe just tell them what you're trying to achieve, right? To give your board some level of certainty and visibility in terms of making a decision. Show them your work. It's like, am I missing something? Is there another way I can do this? Just, maybe you've done that already, but have them.
Well, then they already
Have
have
it.
a formula.
they don't.
They don't.
They said, well, we were gonna do what we did with San Ynez, and I said, well, can you point me to when San Ynez, it was like 1978 is the first agreement with them, and there doesn't seem to be anything that goes back that far that says, this is how we calculated that 300,000. Instead, what they did, and it's an interesting model, I think I've mentioned this to you guys before, San Ynez is a 20% owner of the solving system.
Right.
Okay, so they just pay 20% of all the costs, including, for instance, this upgrade they're about to go through. San Ynez will pay 20% of that upgrade. At 300,000 gallons, we would be somewhere between 10 and 20%, right? And so they said, we want to treat you like San Ynez, because I asked that question about contracts. And they said, no, we definitely want to go down the you're a part owner kind of model.
Lease type thing.
Yeah.
or,
So they've indicated that, and to your point, they can only charge what it costs, they can't make a profit. But there isn't that first I have been unable to find, it may be out there somewhere, that first document that says, okay, when San Ynez came on board, there was X fee, or whatever. I know if they tried to say, and I think the number I saw was like 90 million, I may be off on that number, but that their entire plant at 1.5 million gallons a day with disposal and all their infrastructure is worth about $90 million. If they said to us, oh, you're 20% of 90 million, well then you're right back up to the cost of us building our own plant. Which they may do, I don't know, right? That's an easy calculation, right? $90 million valuation, you're gonna be 20%,
Does,
you know?
Sandy, does CSD have any information going back to when they started?
I've searched both of their websites for any sort of information, their old minutes, and you know, none of the people that are there today were around in 1978 when that was. Some of them probably weren't even born yet. But
You know, I'm curious on the discussions with the city is solving, is that all with Public Works or whoever, like the technical people? I mean, has the city attorney weighed in, city manager? Okay.
It's city manager and wastewater treatment
Okay.
manager, whatever.
Okay. Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the city manager who's saying, we want to treat you like Solomon. Or saying that's right, sorry. Can I take public comment? Officially?
Sure. Any other public comment on this? So that was a baseball no, right? Yeah.
No,
So there were these two sheets you were sharing, was there a third?
No, that's just leftover from when we were working through the plan with Regen way back when.
So you're intending to post this as well?
Just these two, yeah. And this was the one we were talking about the other day that I've still got to work in. But yeah, remember, this is the one from the board meeting the other day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And then just in the middle here, it's just flows. This was, oh, there's our calculations. So 385 on the absolute total peak, and you know, there's the 130 we talked about. And so the way this works is here's today, right, in green.
Right.
At the 20-year build out, there's this. We assume some level of ADUs, 20-year build out with ADUs. But remember, when we go from this number to this number, you apply this peaking factor, which is great for a clay pipe gravity fed system, but we're not going to be clay pipe, so it doesn't have the infiltration, right? So changing that number, this might be hello, do that. This number might be more reasonable for what we're talking about. Watch what happens to the max, goes way down.
Yeah. Who would validate that assumption? Is that the EIR, is that water
Wow.
board who says?
That's your district engineer makes that decision, and the board ratifies it.
Okay.
And even Stantec said that one was pretty conservative, because you know they're in the particularly 30%. They're like, yeah, you want to be conservative because that's going to drive pipe sizes, and you don't want to have to grow your pipe. You don't mind shrinking it if you can, but putting in a bigger pipe when you're planning for a smaller one it could be tough. So those are the sheets. I'm sorry, it's the other chart.
Can you just do a draft watermark on all these and
For sure.
qualify it, you know,
Yeah.
what out of them? I mean, I think it's important to share the work in progress that people need to understand.
Yep.
That it's all draft.
Yep, I can do that.
And maybe,
What I'll probably do is just print it out as a PDF, and when they post a PDF,
input, yeah.
watermark a PDF. I don't know, I could watermark an in progress Excel sheet. I mean, you can put it in the, you know,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could put a
I mean, I
line
think
right
that
here
in
that
the
just says
header-
draft.
No, I put it in the header, I put it in the document.
Across the
I put
face.
it in the document name.
Yeah.
You know, even in the, like it says decision-making matrix, I would just, you know.
Yeah, call the file.
Working file.
Draft.
Just-
Subject to change.
Yeah, so just qualify.
Yeah, it's, don't hang your hat on the numbers, but
And
you
then-
know, we're kind of in the ballpark.
The other thing is if you're doing it in a PDF, to the extent you can annotate or footnote where the data comes from, or the assumptions, that's a pain.
Yeah,
But
I
I
can do
think it's important, if
Okay.
we're gonna have it be a meaningful public document, you know, it's like, it's where your data comes from. The
Yeah,
assumptions.
there's a lot of that in here, right?
Yeah,
It's like,
no, I know, and it's great to show it. I'm saying if you're looking at it electronically like this, it's easy enough to look at the notes, but if you're
Right.
looking at a static version, you know, you can do that.
all right, I can do that.
Cool, wow, good. I liked the sample bill.
again, my big concern is that solving number, because it could,
It's wild.
it's a,
It's the
it's a
unknown.
blindfolded dart throw.
So, yeah, so,
So trying to drive to a more concise number on that, and that's gonna be driven by the city of Salt Lake. They've got to be ready and willing to engage in the conversation.
yeah, so
So-
how do we? Yeah. So how do we help them do that in a way that meets our timeline goals? Is that a,
Yeah,
is that a Julie, is that a president to mayor thing? Is that a, I'm just,
No, I'm
how,
you know,
I mean, obviously they
Yeah.
can't make it, they have their timeline, and I'm just thinking in terms of making a, 75% decision versus a 50, 35 to 50%. How would the certainty?
yeah,
Well, yeah, some place that they can, like I said, the letter of intent, something that we can reference that says, okay, this is where we're thinking. And, that's, because you're right, I mean, that number's the wild card all the way around, on that, so,
yeah, I mean, yeah, it's, much like some of the local groups like San Diego Concerned Citizens and others, the city is pretty darn focused on the new development, and their council, apart from the normal machinations they have to go through,
yeah.
that's their hot button.
Yeah.
Until they have this back on the agenda, getting something from the council will be tough. I can take a few more runs at the city manager.
What about the water board encouraging them? I'm just thinking about how do we, they're the ones who want the regional solution, they have a vested interest in seeing this, I don't know what their relationship is, I get it. They've got to be able to manage multiple projects at a time.
And they should be able to provide the formula for how they're gonna calculate.
Or even validate your assumptions, just give us something. It's like, don't.
Yes, no, I, in every meeting I've been at with them, I pushed this exact
Yeah.
topic, and I've made minuscule incremental progress, not,
So if we at least knew what their formula was, we can plug numbers into it, that's the thing, their formula should be the same
you would think.
no matter what, because you can only charge what it costs you. So it's just a number for each parcel, or the number for the flow.
Agreed, yeah, and I use the per parcel
Yeah.
number,
Yeah.
and there are different ways you can calculate that.
Sure.
Backing up, kind of just opening the aperture a little bit, there's a benefit to them in doing this
Mhm.
financially. So there's a window of opportunity for them to realize that benefit. Meaning, we have to make a decision.
Mhm.
So, we need some help knowing how to make the best decision, and lacking that clarity, I'm not feeling any certainty about being able to make that decision.
They can either.
So that's why I'm just thinking, if there's a way
Yeah.
to communicate the urgency of some more clarity within this window of time, I'm just.
You're getting smiles from me because I've tried. If you've got some other ways you want to approach it, I'm happy to have that conversation. To your point, maybe Julie calling the mayor and saying, hey, look.
And sit down with Randy and you
Yeah,
and
let's
Mayor Brown
bang
and
this out.
Julie, and how do we, I'm thinking
Yeah, maybe that's the
that
answer.
that's the way,
Yeah.
we've got to,
Yeah.
work up and down the,
For sure.
because, and I think that to me, if I'm them, and it's like, look, from a negotiating standpoint, it's a window of opportunity for both parties that we'd like to keep open. They should want to.
Totally agree.
Okay. we're just subcommittee member comments.
Any subcommittee other comments?
I think we've made them all. As we've gone along. No, I think you did a great job, and I think that's gonna help a lot of people with the questions they've been asking. There's not a simple, easy answer. It has a lot of different what ifs. It's, that's why we need to narrow it down and get some hard numbers so we know how we can do it.
I mean, I want to make this absolutely clear, if the number the city solving swings to the same number for treatment for us, that whole equation is different, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't want anybody to walk out, oh, clearly the city solving is cheaper. We don't know that,
We don't.
right? At this point, we don't know that.
And that's a big, important factor.
The other thing in the risk column is the permitting factor, because even if the costs align, I'm not convinced that we're gonna be able to permit and build something in district. It's gonna take us a decade, based on we end up either having eminent domain, litigation, whatever it is, it's just, just from the siting. I
Yes.
think the siting risk is huge, and I understand.
And we already know what we ran into the first time
So I
around,
just,
and it's only gonna be,
there's no litigation column on that, cost factor on the capital, is there? On the capital construction side. I mean, it's real.
yeah,
I mean, we could be in for $500,000 in litigation easily.
that's probably the start.
And maybe on the solid too, but I think it's higher on the district. And I'm not poo-pooing it, I just think it's a reality. It's gonna be a rough, based on the amount of acreage we need and
Well, and that's what makes that whole solvent connection so attractive, in my mind, is that if we can avoid having to do an in-district plan.
I'm assuming you're reopening the prior items that you're continuing to talk about this stuff.
I know, we were done.
If you want to talk about siding, here's a view into siding for just a second.
Yeah.
So every year I get from the county the parcel list with lot sizes and partial property taxes and all that sort of stuff, and we go through it every year. I've taken the list that they provide me, I've hidden a ton of columns. You can see over here it goes A to E, right? So B through D is, and then done some more. You've got the APN. I added this E just to simplify what's going on over here, so I could sort if I had to by that. What you're looking at here is a list that was then sorted by vacant land, which is why this is yellow, because there's no associated property tax bill for structures, which means it's a vacant lot, right? And then, so it's sorted first by this and then by acreage. And so pretty quickly you can see who the various owners are of parcels that are, going down to 0.62 acres for the vacant ones, and
And the LO camp is all Montanaro, right?
the Los Olivos Camp LLC?
Yeah.
No, not all of them.
But
There are others around. I believe Montanaro has 5 parcels these days. It might be 6. But there are more, as you can see, Los Olivos Camp LLC than just those.
right.
And some of these, I think a couple of them are the Sarlus properties. I don't know, that might be what Stage Stop Plaza
That's
is.
Stage Stop Plaza is the Sarlus of the brand one.
And this is dated because any construction, the way this works is you're always running a year behind, and that's a year behind. So this is 2 years ago, it's property tax, right?
Yeah, but still.
So some of these may have been built on, is what I'm getting at by now. But yeah, so those are the big parcels, right? And if you need 4 acres for a percolation chamber, well, there are exactly 2 parcels where you can put 4 acres of perk chambers, right? If you need 2.5 acres for a treatment plants, in addition to the 4 acres you need for the other, well, there's not a whole lot of those lots, right? And fewer if you're talking about ones that aren't built on. That's somewhere in there, right? So you've got a dozen lots in the district.
Within the district as opposed to adjacent to the district.
Now, you can do something like, these are only 1.5, but you can combine them because they're all vacant. I'm sorry, didn't you? Yeah. And you've got 3.5 acres. So there's some things you can do here.
Okay.
Yeah. So
Limited options.
very limited options. That's your point.
All right, are we in the end?
Right, no,
Just thank you for the work on this, Guy. Thanks.
Sure.
It's made progress, so thank you. No reports. All right. Can I get a motion to adjourn at 10:22?
so moved.
All those in favor?
That'll be good to see you.
No, it's learned a lot, so I appreciate it.